of our state of Palestine for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to thank the Deputy Special Coordinator, Mr. Ramiz Al-Bakrav, for his briefing. Mr. President, Israel welcomes the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. We thank the United States of America and President Trump for pushing this process forward with moral clarity, conviction, and courage. Israel is fully committed to meeting our obligations under this plan. We have facilitated hundreds of humanitarian aid trucks entering Gaza each day, more than 800 trucks a day in the last week. We have clearly marked the yellow line to ensure operational clarity. We have released Palestinian terrorists, not prisoners, terrorists, including murderers, and withdrawn our forces as required. We are working in close coordination with international partners. Hamas, on the other hand, continues to blatantly violate the terms of the plan. They failed to meet the 72-hour deadline to return the hostages. They have already killed 3 of our soldiers during the ceasefire and repeatedly sent terrorists across the Israeli lines to attack our forces. This Saturday brought yet another breach. A Hamas terrorist entered Israeli-controlled territory to attack our soldiers along a humanitarian aid corridor. Israel responded by eliminating 5 senior Hamas operatives involved in these attacks. Israel will continue to honor its commitments under the plan, but we will not hesitate to neutralize immediate threats to our citizens and our soldiers. We remain focused on achieving our goals, bringing our fallen hostages home, and ensuring that Hamas is disarmed. We are still waiting for the return of the bodies of our 3 fallen hostages so that they can be given the dignity of a proper burial. We wait for Ron Gvili, Dror Or, and Sudisak Rintalak from Thailand. All of them are not forgotten. We will bring them home. Mr. President, many times in the last year I have emphasized that we would not stop until we brought all the hostages home. You heard me, repeating it every meeting. Israel has proven when we set a goal, we pursue it with determination and we get it done. That same determination guides our second goal. Hamas must be disarmed. Not partially, not symbolically, fully and irreversibly. The truth is that there can be no peace, no stability, and no future for Gaza while Hamas remains armed. That must be the focus of the international community. In the wake of the ceasefire, the world has seen that Hamas, what they do to the people. You saw the pictures where they publicly execute Gazans in the streets, crushing dissent, and silencing anyone who questioned its rule. As we speak, Hamas is attempting to assert its control over parts of Gaza. Israel will not allow terrorists to rebuild or reposition. They can take off their green handbands, but changing into a civilian outfit does not turn terrorists into partners for peace. This plan would succeed only if Hamas permanently loses its weapons. Some colleagues, even today, have suggested that the Palestinian Authority could be the one to disarm Hamas and rebuild Gaza. But this assumed the PA would suddenly do something it has never done. Terror groups operate openly. Iranian weapons slip into Judea and Samaria unchecked. Extremists grow stronger because no one stops them. So Israel has to step in, to seize the weapons the PA ignores, to dismantle the cells it won't confront, and to disarm the terrorists it refuses to challenge. Last month, for the 3rd time this year, Israel intercepted a major Iranian shipment bound for these groups. It included 29 explosive mines, 15 rockets, and 60 pistols, all sent by Iran into Judea and Samaria. This is the consequence of PA in action. Israel is left to dismantle the terror networks they refuse to confront. The PA is not short of armed bodies. Let me name a few of them. They have the preventive security, Al-Aman al-Wiyaki, with about 4,000 trained operatives. They have the civil police, Al-Shurta al-Madaniya, of 9,000 operatives. They have the Presidential Guard, Al-Aras al-Raisi, of 2,000 operatives. The Civil Defense, and its largest armed wing, the National Security Forces, with roughly 8,000 uniformed personnel. And you add to that the general intelligence and military intelligence networks, and the PA controls over 32,000 armed operatives. 32,000 in Judea and Samaria. The PA has the manpower, the equipment, the resources to fight these terrorists. You should ask them why they do not mobilize those forces. Send the troops from Ramallah to stop the violence, confiscate weapons, and confront these terrorists. Moreover, the Palestinian Authority is not only failing to stop terror, it is incentivizing it. The clearest example is the PA's pay-for-slay policy. And I want to remind my colleagues of what we exposed last month when we met. The PA is still paying terrorists, but now it's under different packaging. In February, President Abbas told the world he was reforming the system because many of the countries here, you told him we will not give you any more money if you will not stop with the pay-to-slay. So he said very nice in English that he would reform the system. He scrapped the old law and replaced it with a shiny new plan, and it's called now social criteria. That was the English language version. But a few weeks later in Arabic, Abbas said something very different. At a gathering of the Fatah in Ramallah, he said, and I quote, "I told you once and I stand by my word, even if we have only one penny left, it is for the prisoners and the martyrs." I think he used that quote also at the UN. This is double language at its worst, Mr. President. What is more is that the new system didn't shrink the program of pay-to-slay. It expanded it. More than 2,000 households suddenly became newly eligible. And let's be honest, that is not welfare. That is putting terrorists on a payroll. For example, a terrorist who murdered innocent civilians and was convicted for 10 years in prison, he will get every month $1,800 directly to his family account. And when he gets to jail, he will get a special bonus, a lump sum of $4,500. You know, in Ramallah, it's a lot of money. A benefits package most law-abiding young people in Ramallah can only dream of, that all of a sudden the family will get a monthly stipend, almost $2,000. They don't need to work. They don't need to worry. And you look at the budget of the PA, and we heard a few concerns from distinguished colleagues about the budget of the PA. It tells the rest of the story. In 2024, the PA paid $144 million in these stipends, salaries to terrorists. In 2025, they have already committed $214 million, and the year is not over yet. The PA, unfortunately, has not ended pay for slay. It has grown pay for slay. Abbas has now dismissed his finance minister. in an attempt to blame one person for a system he himself protects. But we are not fooled. They can replace a minister, but they cannot replace the facts. You cannot fight terror. You cannot disarm terror while you pay for it. Mr. Mansour, it is time to end pay for slay now, once and for all. Mr. President, this week we mark 78 years since the UN proposed the partition plan of 29 November 1947. The proposal divided the land between Jews and Arabs so both could live side by side. Israel accepted it. We said yes. The local Arab leadership rejected it and instead declared war on Israel 78 years ago. That choice became a pattern. Whenever a real opportunity for peace appeared, we moved forward, but the Palestinian leadership stepped back. In the Oslo years, Israel recognized the Palestinian leadership and negotiated directly with them. At Camp David and Taba, Israel entered serious talks. In 2008, Israel tabled a detailed plan on all issues. Each was an opportunity for peace, and each was missed. Mr. President, a leadership that refuses to disarm terrorists and continues to reward them is not building peace. Today, almost 78 years after the General Assembly's vote of 29 November 1947, Hamas and other terrorist groups are trying to set the tone and dominate the region. Israel will not let that happen. We will safeguard our security and move forward with reliable and moderate partners. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. Remind speakers to maintain appropriate standards of tone and content in their remarks and uphold the respect this chamber and the matter under consideration deserves. And I'll give the floor to the permanent observer of the Observer State of Palestine.
Mr. President, allow me at the outset to thank you for convening this meeting and to commend your presidency for highlighting defense of international law. Allow me also to thank Deputy Special Coordinator, Mr. Ramiz Al-Akbarov, for his briefing and appeals and for his efforts, and through him to thank the UN, its Secretary General, its agencies, including UNRWA, and most importantly, its staff on the ground who have faced death, suffering, and starvation as they attempted to save lives throughout the last 2 years. There is no substitute to the role of the United Nations and its agencies when it comes to humanitarian aid, education, and health, a role needed today more than ever. Mr. President, Palestinians in Gaza waited desperately for the horrific war against them to end. And they welcomed more than anyone around the world the announcement of the ceasefire agreement. But Palestinians are still being killed and maimed, with aid restricted and reconstruction delayed. Palestinians want all of this to end. And they don't want to lose half of Gaza in the process. The ceasefire must be upheld and respected in full. Nothing can justify that 1,000 Palestinians have been killed or injured since the onset of the ceasefire. Nothing can justify that since the start of the ceasefire, every single day, 2 Palestinian children are killed by Israel. And while recognizing that situation is, of course, not comparable to what it was before the ceasefire, it is essential to remember that the loss of a child for a family is earth-shattering, especially when you thought that they had survived the war and they could now be safe. We should never forget we are talking of the survivors of a genocide that are still having to escape death and suffering every single day while being prevented from rebuilding any part of their life. Nothing justifies that families are confronted with the harsh winter in tents drenched in water, that their basic needs and rights are not upheld, that the health and education systems that have been destroyed are yet to be rebuilt. Nothing justifies that communities continue to be forcibly displaced. At every juncture, the U.S. administration has to intervene, often at the highest level, to prevent the ceasefire agreement from collapsing altogether. The mediators, the U.S., Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, whose efforts are highly appreciated, instead of being able to focus on the day after, have every day to deal with the one crisis after another. It is a deliberate attempt to prevent us all from moving forward towards life, towards liberty, towards peace. And yet, our people in Gaza show the world every day how determined they are to restore life in Gaza. Even before they could have a home to keep them warm and safe, the first thought of our people in Gaza was to get their children to resume their education, despite the impossible circumstances. In this connection, we salute UNRWA for having about 100,000 kids receiving education by the end of this month. They are trying to restore in the midst of ruins and in the most inhumane circumstances some form of normalcy. Mr. President, Palestine together with the region and the world welcomed the Trump plan as a means to end the war. It did so fully aware of Israelis' intentions. Israel seeks the collapse of the ceasefire as it continues to pursue the three things that President Trump's plan denied it: forced displacement, occupation, annexation. It is trying to achieve this aim by stalling the entry of humanitarian aid, by resuming its attacks, and most importantly, by trying to entrench the yellow line or even to advance beyond it. Everywhere in the region, the same policy: land grab disguised under security pretext. In Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria, Israel knows security would be best achieved by just and lasting peace, but continues to fuel perpetual war. Everywhere it is undermining the efforts to cease fire and achieve peace. It is in this context that the Security Council adopted Resolution 2803, which owed a lot more to this complicated reality and to the efforts to consolidate the ceasefire and to move to phase 2 than to the realization of the rights of the Palestinian people or the achievement of peace at this juncture. And yet, the resolution simply referring to Palestinian self-determination and statehood drove the Israeli government crazy. Netanyahu felt compelled to come out publicly to say no Palestinian state under any circumstances, followed by a renewed call by the Israeli Prime Minister for the displacement of our people from Gaza. Gaza is Palestinian, and in fact, this is an understatement. Gaza is the bleeding heart of Palestine, like Jerusalem is its beating heart. There is no Palestine without Gaza. And the future of Gaza will be determined by Palestinians, and it is one in which there will be no occupation, no blockade, no annexation, no forced displacement. Our right to self-determination is enshrined in the UN Charter, and before that, our right to freedom is enshrined in natural law. Nothing can alter this right, and our people will not renounce it. And Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are one Palestinian territory confronted with the same policies, even though at different scales. Mr. President, it is imperative that the attacks against the Palestinian people in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, by occupation forces and Israeli settlers, are brought to an end, and with them the policy of displacement and replacement of our people by uprooting communities and colonizing the land. In this regard, we hope that the very important and strong condemnations that we have heard in recent days will translate into actions that will ensure our people will no longer be subjected to such horrific attacks. Israel must also bring an end to its policy aimed at undermining politically, financially, and militarily the Palestinian Authority to thwart the prospect of independent statehood. It must stop its attacks and release the withheld tax revenues. Mr. President, this Council has often spoken of the fate and treatment of Israeli hostages now finally free. There is no explanation why it should not show more attention to the plight of Palestinian prisoners who are arrested by the thousands, often detained without any explanation or justification, and subject to the worst forms of abuse. When a video leaked of the rape by Israeli jailers of a Palestinian prisoners, the scandal in Israel was about the leak, not the rape. Some openly considered the rapists as heroes and praised them for their despicable act. There are many testimonies of sexual abuse against men, women, and children. Behind bars, doctors and humanitarians are treated as animals. 100 Palestinian prisoners have died in Israeli custody in the last 2 years, either killed or left to die through medical neglect and starvation in very harsh conditions.